F1 on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
2 Grand Prix and 1 sprint race down, and we arrive in Japan for round 3 of the Formula One Championship. Welcome to Saturday in Suzuka. Ahead of us, we've got the final practice session of the weekend before we get into qualifying a little later on this afternoon. Alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, is the racing driver Alice Powell. And Alice, 4 red flags in FP2 yesterday, so this next hour of final practice running it's going to be absolutely crucial.
I think that was a record, wasn't it, with that amount of red flags. Obviously that big crash for Jack Doohan heading into turn 1, where we got confirmation that was because his DRS was still open. It's activated by the driver. There's only one DRS zone on this track, which is down into turn 1, and we had a conversation where you asked me, well, how come it didn't shut? But you turn in flat through for turn 1, and it only shuts when you brake. You have to then manually shut it otherwise. So he was okay, good to see him walk away, but he will be out in this session.
Yeah, 185 mile per hour crash into the wall for Jack Doohan. The car completely destroyed. Doohan was able to get out of the car with some assistance and get himself to the medical car to be taken for checks. He is now fine, and Alpine have said that they have worked late into the night to rebuild that car. All parts have been replaced with the exception of the power unit after that FP2 crash. So we expect to see Jack Doohan trying to get as much running in as possible throughout the course of the next hour. And it's a beautiful circuit. It's one that all the drivers absolutely love coming to, this Suzuka track. 18 turns, 10 to the right and 8 to the left. It was it is rather chilly, actually, colder than usual temperatures. Of course, now the Japanese Grand Prix moved much earlier in the year due to Formula One trying to group as many of the tracks as possible regionally in an aid to pursue more sustainable racing. Air temperature just under 14 degrees at the moment. Track temperature just below 38 degrees. Expect that to ramp up. But it's a really unique circuit as well, isn't it, Alice? Because it's a figure of 8. You kind of go back on yourself at many occasions throughout this lap. Talk us through a lap of this Suzuka track.
It's a challenge, and that's what the drivers love. Not just a challenge due to the nature of the corners, but there's no room for error. You run wide, and we saw plenty of drivers do it yesterday. Fernando Alonso, for example, another one of the red flags. He touched the grass ever so slightly into the first Degner, into turn 8, ran wide, and he got stuck in the gravel. And these drivers love that kind of pressure, these kind of tracks that don't reward you if you you can't make many gains by running wide like we see at other circuits. But you've got that fantastic first sector where you've got that famous S's, the uphill left right all the way up to Dunlop curb. Then you've got Degner 1 and 2, which is turn 8 and 9, that really challenge the drivers. It draws you in to carry more and more speed into the corner. And then we head down to one of the slowest parts of the track, which is turn 11, the hairpin, where we saw plenty of drivers snatching that inside front left, running wide into the gravel. Albon did it yesterday, Antonelli did it yesterday. Both of them escaped hitting the barrier. Then the famous spoon section, which brings you back round on yourself, so you're coming back as you head into sector 3, and the hugely famous 130R, the flat out left-hander turn 15 into the heavy braking zone, into 16, 17, when we saw the McLaren not enjoying itself going over those curbs yesterday, particularly in free practice 1. They seemed to dial that out much better for the final practice session that we had yesterday. And then you're back round to finish a lap through the flat out turn 18 onto the main straight, which is our only DRS section on this circuit.
Oh, thank you very much, Alice. A lovely tour around the Suzuka track. Very much enjoyed that. I mean, it is pretty much, you ask every driver and they say if it is not their favourite, it is one of their favourite, as most of the drivers are now already strapped in or getting strapped into their cars. Esteban Ocon climbing into a rather beautiful liveried Haas. They've changed that up for this weekend, adding some pink cherry blossom to the car, which is lovely and intertwined with the regular Haas livery as they nod to their partner Toyota now. Toyota Gazoo Racing, a technical partner of the Haas team, and increasing their links back in with Formula One. Red Bull, the other car to go with a unique livery. They've gone for an all-white livery to pay homage to their engine partner Honda, and Honda's first F1 winner, the RA272, which won the Mexico Grand Prix back in 1965 with Richie Ginther at the wheel. But fast forward to 2025, and FP3 in Japan is underway. Green light on at the end of the pit lane, and 59 minutes and 30 seconds remain of this session, and straight out, unsurprisingly, is the Alpine of Jack Doohan. Also joining him out on track is the Mercedes of George Russell, Isaac Hadjar's Racing Bull, and the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, as the sun is shining above this Suzuka track. The blue skies above too, with a few whispery white clouds in the air. Lovely conditions then to try and get as much action in as possible. Let's just bring you up to speed with how the standings look as well ahead of this session. In terms of the Drivers' Championship, Lando Norris and McLaren lead the way, 44 points to their name. Norris is 8 clear of Max Verstappen. Then it's George Russell, Oscar Piastri and Kimi Antonelli rounds out the top 5. And then in the Constructors' Championship, once again, McLaren lead with 78 points. They are 21 clear of Mercedes. Then it's Red Bull, Williams and Ferrari, courtesy of their double disqualification last time out in China, currently lie down in 5th. Then it's Haas, Aston Martin, Sauber and Racing Bulls, with Alpine the only team yet to get off the mark with 0 points to their name so far, hoping to put that right come the checkered flag on Sunday. And right now, Alice, after the 2 practice sessions we've seen so far, even though FP2 got such limited running, we're hoping to see a little more this morning about the long run pace for these cars. But at the moment, even though the car looked tricky at times, it's the McLarens who look clear of the field.
It is. I mean, they really struggled in free practice 1. Yeah, you're probably thinking, well, hang on, it was Lando Norris that was fastest, but he really wasn't happy with the handling of his McLaren. It looked awful over the curbs. Oscar Piastri was all the way down in 15th place, 1.1 seconds off his teammate. But that all changed for McLaren in free practice 2. The car did look better than it did in the first practice session. Okay, we had some mixed running due to the red flags, quite a few interruptions. Yuki Tsunoda was all the way down in 18th, but he didn't get a run on the soft tyre in the end. But yeah, it's looking like the McLarens are the ones to beat heading into this weekend. But you can't rule out Lewis, as Jack Doohan just runs ever so slightly wide on the exit of turn 9. Lewis had a decent run yesterday in the Ferrari, but Max Verstappen, he hasn't got the best car underneath him. He's been quite vocal with that, and Yuki was the same yesterday. Says it just feels a bit strange. It doesn't handle as it should. But you can't rule them out. But I think the McLarens are the favourites heading into qualifying.
Well, let's hear from the man who is currently leading the Drivers' Championship and was quick yesterday too, Lando Norris.
Lando, the car at times looked a little bit tricky to handle, yet McLaren's topped both sessions. How actually was it out there?
I mean, it's pretty good. I think we're still in a good position. I think it's tricky just because of the wind. Wind makes a big difference, especially on a circuit like this when it's so quick. You're on like such a fine limit for such a long time, like the first sector. The tiniest bit of wind can really upset the car quite a lot. So I think, to be honest, I'm sure everyone's struggling with a similar thing. I still feel good. I still feel like we're in a reasonable place. We made some steps forward, but still some things to try and improve for tomorrow. So happy enough for a Friday.
It still feels like we're sort of trying to shake out where everyone is this season. Do you guys know where you are in comparison to those teams who you expect to be sort of fighting you the hardest?
I mean, I still think we're at the top, but I think George was very quick this morning, just as quick as us. So I think Mercedes are in a good place. Maybe Red Bull looked a little bit further off, but they have looked further off until qualifying, and then they get a bit closer again. So to be honest, I think the normal, but just a messy session. So I don't think this session was probably the best example of where everyone was. I think maybe FP1 was a better example, that you kind of saw teams in order. But I still expect it to be close and a tough battle tomorrow. I mean, I hope it's not. I hope it's nice and easy for us, but I'm sure Mercedes at least, and definitely George from today's showings will be challenging us a bit tomorrow.
Good luck. Thanks, Lando.
Lando Norris speaking to Christian Hugill after practice yesterday. So still with more pace to find, but feeling good. But outlining that the Mercedes of George Russell also looking quite quick. A bit of on-track action in the last few moments. A rather interesting radio message being delivered from Isaac Hadjar, the French rookie in the Racing Bulls car, saying he was having a problem in the cockpit after being asked what happened there by his team. He's come back into the pits. We haven't actually seen what the problem was, so we'll try and investigate that for you and bring that to you. This is the sound of Nico Hülkenberg right now in the Sauber, making his way down that long stretch towards the flat-out left-hander of 130R, getting almost up to 300 kilometers an hour. Let's see how flat he is.
Easy,
even in these early stages in the Sauber, and we'll be getting up to speed quicker and quicker throughout this session, through the Casio triangle, through the right, then the left, and then it curves round to the start-finish line, and he crosses the line in 54 minutes and 13, 12, 11 seconds. It's currently Max Verstappen who is the fastest car out there with a 1:30.397 on the hard tyre. Most of the others alternating between the hard and the medium tyre. Kimi Antonelli pushing hard on the medium tyre. The Italian rookie in the Mercedes running out wide on the exit of the second Degner, kicking up the gravel as he does so, doing what Jack Doohan did a few moments ago. And actually, let's pick up on that for Jack Doohan in terms of, well, I say that is a red flag out on the track. Now, yesterday we had 4 red flags, one for Fernando Alonso crashing, one for Jack Doohan crashing, but the other 2 was for fire, the grass catching fire because it's so dry, but also the fact that the sparks flying from the underside of these cars was allowing it to set alight. We haven't seen the reason for a red flag yet. I wonder if it is fire again, because every car is moving on the tracker, and there is fire once again. Now, this is worrying though for everybody, including the FIA, the governing body, who did put out a statement yesterday saying that their focus before today was going to be on preemptive measures. The grass was cut as short as possible and loose dried grass removed from the affected areas where we saw the fires yesterday. Prior to today's sessions, the grass was dampened and specific response teams are stationed around the track. But clearly, once again, we have got fire issues, and this is quite worrying, really, for progressing throughout the rest of the weekend, isn't it, Alice?
This is not good, because we get this in the race. We can't be stopping every 5-10 minutes during the race to extinguish fires. It's not roasting hot out there. The track temperature is
14. Track temperature is 38.
Yeah, 38. Sorry, it's quite small on the screen, and 14.2 for air temperature. So we're used to racing in much hotter, warmer temperatures, but clearly the grass is very dry. As you said, they were going to dampen areas, but obviously that's not enough, or it's an area that's potentially missed, or the dampening has not worked. So quite worrying. It's FIA clearly, and it spreads quickly, and we saw that yesterday. So it's spread a whole patch of grass, and it's covered quite a large area. So it's not like it's spreading slowly. And actually, the patch the final patch that brought out the final red flag yesterday in free practice 2 was kind of heading towards the grandstands, wasn't it? It was spreading quite quickly. So this will be a really big concern for the organisers and the FIA.
Yeah, and a real shame for the grandstands, which are absolutely packed out. The Japanese fans love their Formula One, and they always put so much enthusiasm with what they're wearing, the DRS hats, the full-on driver overalls that some of them are walking around the public areas in. They want to see cars out on track, and at the moment, red flag preventing that as the marshals deal with the fire that is currently on the circuit. They are dealing with it as we speak, but we haven't got any live pictures to bring you more details of that. It is a red flag for FP3. 50 minutes and 47 seconds remain. Only 8 drivers were able to put any kind of lap time in. Verstappen fastest on the hard tyre, a 1:33. Then Antonelli 4/10 back on the medium. Sainz was third, Lawson Sonoda fifth, Bortoletto and Hulkenberg 6th and 7th, ahead of Jack Doohan 8th in the Alpine. And for somebody like Doohan, obviously this affects every driver with limited track time, as it was yesterday too, but for Doohan this is just another tough pill to swallow, especially after his first flying lap. He ran a bit wide coming out of the second Degner, kicking up the gravel. His confidence must be really, really low at the moment.
His lap that he actually did, his sole lap that he did yesterday in free practice 2, was on par with his teammate Pierre Gasly. Of course, Gasly then eventually went faster, as did everybody else. So that should give him a bit of confidence. He's raced here several times in Asian Formula 3, so he's got experience of the track. But certainly that error with not closing the DRS, that was the sole reason. The car otherwise is fairly stable through turn 1, but it's crucial track time, crucial minutes that he is missing due to this red flag. A reminder that the practice session clock continues to run, unlike qualifying and the race where time is effectively paused, stopped, but in free practice that clock runs. So we could have a red flag for the next 49 minutes, and that would be the end of free practice. They may at certain times give exception and allow the drivers an extra 30 minutes if the schedule allows, but in this case that they've had 2 free practice sessions already, I can't see that happening, but hopefully we'll be back underway very soon.
Yeah, no messages on our race control board yet, and we're not being shown how the fire is being dealt with either, so we'll try and keep you up to speed with how this progresses. But all the drivers then back into their garages and just sat there waiting to be told when to go out again. Now, I want to talk about the Red Bull and the Racing Bulls. Now, we spoke a lot about that yesterday, particularly obviously with the Yuki Tsunoda and the Liam Lawson driver swap. I feel like we've kind of done that a lot already, but what I wanted to focus on was this window that keeps being talked about how in the Red Bull it seems to have a very narrow window to find in terms of operating operating that car to get it at its absolute maximum peak. Whereas when the Racing Bulls goes out there, that looked so quick yesterday. That seems to be a more drivable car with a wider window. Alice, can you explain
I'm chuckling maybe because I'm looking through producer Joe at a window, and clearly at this time in the morning he gets the chuckles when talking about windows. But
I just want to focus on these windows, please.
So they're talking the window of performance, basically, and you often hear drivers say, I've not got the tyres into the right window, and that when they're talking about that's purely just getting the tyres up to temperature, getting the best out of the tyres, getting them to the peak at the right moment. But then when they talk about performance, as plenty of the cars are firing up now, which is usually a sign that we'll be back underway shortly. And performance window is getting that car where it needs to be for the conditions at that moment on track or during a session. And clearly the McLaren is a bit more adaptable in terms of track conditions and performance on track, whereas the Red Bull not so much. But you can have a car that's roughly in the window, but still not necessarily having the best performance. A nice handling car is not always the fastest out there. You want to maximise every inch, and there'll always be areas, even though a driver says sometimes that car was perfect, there's nothing I would change. Once they dive into that data, they analyse it a bit more, there will be something that they would like to improve always on the car. But we've got a big queue in the pit lane, Harry, and session is resuming at 11:44 local time, so that is in about 5 seconds time.
Yeah, so all very keen to get out there, but I wonder, is this grass not just gonna
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Again?
Yeah, I think we're going to have the same issue.
This is going to
be green light is on at the end of the pit lane.
Yeah, let's see what happens as they make their way out. They'll be crucial to get as much track time in as possible. Coming back to these windows, the thing that really intrigues me is why the Red Bull's a quicker car, should be on paper, than the Racing Bulls. Why then, why are you designing a car that has such a narrow window that it makes it really tricky to extract that maximum speed, when the Racing Bulls is clearly more of a drivable car, a driver-friendly car? Surely that's the car you want to make for your drivers. Okay, it should be slower, but right now, at least in practice yesterday, I mean, Liam Lawson was up there in the top 5, top 6. I know engine mapping settings are always different in practice, but that Racing Bulls car has looked quick from day one this season. So I just don't understand why you shouldn't be optimizing and trying to make a really driver-friendly car than something that, okay, maybe may have more downforce points, etc., but actually to get that real sweet spot is so hard. Even Max Verstappen is struggling.
I mean, they're not, every team out there is not going out to intentionally make that window small, and they're not going out there to make the car slow. They want to extract the best performance. Just some teams are on top of it and develop and bring new parts better than others. It's a development race as much as it is between the drivers on track. Performance comes from the development as well as the driver feedback and driver performance. So they're not going out there to be like, right, we need to work in this very small window. The broader or the wider that window is, the better, but it's hard to extract it. And you're talking in Red Bull sense, their top driver, of course, is Max Verstappen. We know that he likes that pointy, that really positive front end. He actually came on the radio yesterday and said he was really struggling with the front end of the car. He was half a second off Oscar Piastri yesterday in free practice too. Max was down in P8. Lawson was actually quicker, and so was Hadjar than the two Red Bull Racing Hondas. So it's just that they've not developed the car in the way that they would have liked, and possibly they're going to have to start looking, if they can't get a driver in the number 2 seat to be adaptable and able to drive to the conditions that maybe Max likes, or the type of car that Max likes, then they're going to have to start, of course, thinking about changing that up slightly. But they're not going out there to all try and have a small window.
No, and that's clearly something that particularly when Max Verstappen is showing his frustrations, and Verstappen another one actually just to be flagged by race control, failing to follow race directors' instructions in the pit lane.
Because he was overtaking, you have 2 lanes, you have a fast lane and then you have a slow lane, and I think he pulled into the slow lane and just drove past the queue of cars. Same with Oscar.
Yeah.
He did the same, but that was only purely and simply they went down to queue to do a practice start. So but not allowed to do that, not just in case someone's walking out into the slow lane.
But Verstappen then was quite vocal after practice yesterday in wanting to improve this car. He knows it's not where he wants it to be. Tsunoda, on the other hand, making his debut for Red Bull at his home race this weekend, had a promising start to Friday, particularly in FP1. Didn't get that quick running in FP2 due to the 4 red flags. So let's see what Tsunoda can carry into Saturday here in Suzuka, cheered on by the fans. 42 minutes and 3 seconds remaining, and to the top of the timesheets on the soft tyre is Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, a 1:29.107. He's 3/10 ahead of Lando Norris. Then comes Liam Lawson, Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, the top 5. The sound you can hear is Oscar Piastri getting all out wide on the exit of the second Degner into the gravel. Not the first one to do that, won't be the last either, as the sun glints off that papaya McLaren, trying to keep all 4 wheels pointed in the right direction. Just about does so, but is forced to take to the gravel and even clips a bit of the grass on the way back to rejoining the circuit, but no harm done there. Mixture of the soft, medium and hard tyres all bolted on out there between our 20 drivers. Everybody is out on the track actually, with the exception of the man who probably needs the most amount of track action. Jack Doohan was out there early doors on a soft tyre. He has yet to emerge from the pit lane. So after his big crash in FP2 yesterday, where he didn't switch off the DRS going into turn 1, which the team have pointed out was simply a driver error, and one that he'll learn from. but that's a high-speed crash to learn from, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, very much so. He's lucky to walk away without any injuries. We saw that he sat in the car for a little bit. He gave a thumbs up to the medical team, but from the sound of the way he spoke on the radio, he was definitely winded. He probably will have a couple of bruises. Often you'll see that from a high-speed crash like the nature that Jack Doohan had, knees bashed together, so he's probably got a bruise on the inside of his knees. They do have padded around their legs in the cockpit, so that would have stopped him from getting any injury from hitting the tub, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's got some bruising on the inside of the knee and maybe either side of the elbows.
Yeah, well, let's bring in at this point the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Hi Andrew, thanks for joining us. I mean, this is the last thing that Jack needed, wasn't it? A man under pressure before this season even got going.
That's right. I mean, it was an unfortunate set of circumstances, really. I mean, yes, he made a mistake. He went into turn one with the DRS open, having not lifted off the throttle, basically. Lifting off, but not enough. But he'd been doing it on the simulator, and it had been fine. The simulator hadn't told him that you can't go through turn one at that speed with the DRS open. It's inexperience. He should have known that. The other more experienced drivers would know that. But some teams have their cars set up differently. So some teams, if you lift off at all, then the DRS will automatically shut. That's not the case on the Alpine. You have to lift a certain amount or brake or press the button yourself, and he didn't do any of that. So yes, an error, but kind of unfortunate circumstances, I think, for Doohan as well. And I think it didn't help that, this could have happened earlier in the day, but he missed the first session for Ryo Hirakawa to have a run in the Alpine. Now, I think there's questions being asked about the wisdom of Alpine taking out their rookie driver around Suzuka to put in their reserve driver. Wouldn't it have been better to do that with Gasly's car, who's got experience around Suzuka, because they're taking Gasly out for another driver in Bahrain in P1. Might have been better to swap those two races around, I think, and have Gasly out for P1 here, let Doohan get to grips with probably the most demanding track on the calendar himself in P1.
Yeah, we mentioned that yesterday, didn't we, in the coverage? A bit of a bizarre decision from Alpine, but Jack has had experience, but there's around here in Asian Formula 3, but that's very different to driving a Formula 1 car around this tricky circuit.
Yeah, Jack Doohan then hoping to try and get as much experience under his belt in this FP3 session of this challenging Suzuka track. He is now out of the pits and onto the circuit. This is the sound of Oscar Piastri making his way into the final chicane, the Casio Triangle, round the final right-hander, flat out fastest of anybody in the middle sector and fastest of anybody overall. A 1:28.768 from the Australian who took the win last time out in China, hoping to follow that up this weekend come Sunday afternoon at a track he's done rather well at. Took his maiden front row here and podium 2 years ago in 2023. So for Oscar Piastri, finding more and more pace, his teammate finding the gravel once again on the exit of the second Degner. That's catching out quite a few people so far.
It is. It's downhill. It's tricky. And you turn in, and then it's just slightly off camera by the time you end up meeting the curb, ever so slightly. So that front just pushing on. So Oscar's gone up to the top of the times. Lando, though, he's back on for another push lap. He's fastest of anybody in the first sector overall. And interestingly, the two differences of driving style by both McLaren drivers at this final chicane. So yesterday they were using a lot of the first curb and a lot of the second curb, and it was really unsettling the car. Here's Ocon.
Check the left-hand side of the floor because of the stones.
Copy. So he's on about damage from the gravel. But today, the McLaren seem to be still using quite a bit of the first curb at turn 16 in the chicane, but nowhere near as much of the second curb. Actually, Oscar, who's fastest, only half a tenth ahead of his teammate Norris, barely touched the curb at turn 17. So maybe they've had to adapt their driving style and their preference of curb usage down at the final chicane, just because their car is not as compliant there as they would have liked using the curbs.
35 minutes and 55, 54, 53 seconds remain. Charles Leclerc is coming to the line now. He's currently in third. He's on the soft tyre, looking for a quicker run, but lost time in the middle sector. Still improves overall, courtesy being fastest of anybody in the first sector. Splits the McLarens. It's Piastri who currently has the quickest lap time, a 1:28.7, ahead of Charles Leclerc. Only a couple of hundredths of a second between those two. Then it's Lando Norris, Hamilton fourth, Russell fifth, Alonso sixth, Tsunoda, Behrman, Gasly and Ocon, you just heard from on the radio, 10th ahead of Liam Lawson. Then comes Max Verstappen as Carlos Sainz, we're just being shown having quite a bit of a moment coming through the S's in sector 1 and having to get well out of it and onto the grass, and rejoins just as he heads uphill over the Dunlop curve. No harm done there apart from his tyres, now covered in quite a bit of grass and gravel. Sainz continuing to get up to speed with his new environment at Williams after a tough start for the Spaniard. Verstappen is 12th ahead of Stroll, Hadjar 14th, Sainz is 15th at the moment.
I thought what the McLaren is doing is not allowed.
Review.
Yeah.
So that's Sainz talking about the McLaren of Oscar Piastri on the radio. Now, these were the starting pit lane infringements that were under investigation for Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen. Piastri was doing a practice start on the right-hand side, and these both incidences are being investigated after the end of the session. Now, he has done a pit lane start. He's done it in the allocated spot where they have some grid markings on the right-hand side of the pit lane exit. But I wonder, Alice, is there more to this than when you're restarting after a red flag?
Yeah, so the race drivers' instructions that is given to them by the race director before any session starts, they are amended. They can be amended throughout the weekend if it seems to fit different situations, but you're not allowed to go into the slow lane, so similar to what Max Verstappen did, and then bleed to the end of the pit lane to do a practice start if it's a restart of a free practice session and a qualifying session. So they must form up in a line in a fast lane and leave in the order that they get there, whereas Oscar and Max decided, well, actually we're going to skip this queue and go down to the end of the pit lane to do a practice start. So it will probably be just a slap on the wrists for those two drivers and a bit of a warning not to do it again.
Well, yeah, investigated after the session, so stay tuned to BBC Sport website to see updates on that, and if anything comes of it. Here's Tsunoda.
How was that flat?
Better. Yeah. It's still understand a couple of places, especially sector 1. But overall, very happy.
Overall, very happy. Change of flap for Tsunoda.
Yes, that will be just the front wing flaps. You can adjust the angle. Obviously, if it's more horizontal, that's less air that's hitting the front wing, so that will produce less downforce on the front, so less front grip. And obviously, the more upright the front flaps are, more air is hitting it, so you have more front bite. But too much front bite can cause the rear of the car to be unstable on entry. So he feels that adjustment on the front flap there has suited him slightly better, but still a little bit more to find by the signs of it in terms of clearing and reducing that understeer.
We've heard a fair bit from Tsunoda actually on the radio over the course of this weekend so far, and he seemed very good with his feedback, quite concise. He when that was perhaps a sticking point of Tsunoda previously, it does feel like we are seeing the maturity of Yuki Tsunoda come out now.
Certainly. I was actually thinking when that radio message was being played that it sounds like a completely different Tsunoda from a few seasons or a couple of seasons ago. Definitely much more mature, relishing having this opportunity to jump into the main Red Bull team. And he seems nice and calm and working through the issues more concisely and more professionally than he would have done in the past. So a good job from Yuki. Obviously, there's still plenty of time. This is only the third free practice session that he's had this weekend in that car, so plenty of time for the anger and the frustration to potentially come out during the season. But a good start from Yuki, and impressed with certainly how he's matured throughout the years in his Formula One career.
Yep, Tsunoda then currently putting in the lappage, 10 laps at the moment out on track on the hard tyre. So is Max Verstappen, who's done 13 laps on the hard. So let's hear though from the Japanese driver speaking to Christian Hugel after practice yesterday.
How was session 1 for you? Obviously, you didn't set a sort of representative run in FP2, but in FP1, you certainly looked comfortable.
Yeah, FP1 was better than expected. Good start for myself, and FP2, I didn't set a lap time. I think lots of work to do. Maybe slightly struggled, or something that we have to look through data in FP2 more, but so far, I mean, overall it's okay. Just have to build up confidence more.
You spoke before the weekend about the car feeling okay in the simulator. Now you've had a chance to get out there and drive it in real life. How does it feel? We've heard so much about how this car handles.
It's a bit different to the simulator, what I felt, to be honest. Maybe a little bit more than I expected in terms of car feeling, but I knew anyway it's gonna be always a bit different in the real car, and it was just a little bit more exaggerated in the real car. That's feeling a bit more tricky.
Yuki Tsunoda then feeling confidence in his Red Bull as he continues to get up to speed and finds more and more the limits of what he has underneath him.
I mean, that was also really dodgy. That Red Bull out of garage turn 1.
Yeah, copy, Nico.
Well, that's Nico Hülkenberg, who was on a quick lap, and as he plunged downhill into turn 1, a double right-hander, well, that's where the pit lane exit feeds a car out. So you really have to hug that inside line, and the Red Bull that was in front of him was as far to the right as you can get. But the nature of the circuit, Alice, that does make it rather tricky if you're being fed out there. So is that something that the team have to get a bit better at when they're feeding a driver out, especially in a practice session?
It is. It's also a bit of judgment from the driver as well. It's hard to tell how fast a car is approaching from behind, but if a Formula 1 car is coming flat out down the straight, it's going to appear in your mirrors much bolder pretty quickly. So it could be that Red Bull needs to pull slightly further forward so it's in between the two apexes, but it's fine margins. I'm sure Nico will appreciate. He wasn't happy, but I'm sure he will let them off this time round as we're on board with Yuki Tsunoda. He's out on the hard tyre at the moment. He's done a personal best of himself, comparing to himself in the first sector as he goes through the famous spoon. Really tests the strength of driver's neck, the strength of the core and their legs as they hug through the inside of turn 13 and then into 14 and then of course into 130R. He's half a second down to Oscar Piastri, who's top of the times at the moment, but Oscar's lap time was set on the soft tyre.
Down through the gears, into the right-hander, then the left of the Casio triangle, onto the throttle, round the final corner. The Yuki Tsunoda DRS, the rear wing flap flies open, losing time in that final sector in 6th.
I felt something vibrating, like a wheel's not on or something correctly.
Okay, we'll check everything.
It's Lance Stroll on the radio in the Aston Martin. He's just making his way towards Spoon Curve at the moment, so still out there on the circuit, but the team checking over his Aston Martin. Stroll has had a bit of an anonymous weekend so far. He's down in 17th right now. What I love about some of the stats coming out ahead of this weekend, for Tsunoda in particular, he's never been out-qualified by a teammate in Japan. Meanwhile, his teammate for this weekend, Max Verstappen, has never out-qualified outside the top 5 here. So, well, that could be quite nice and dicey later on this afternoon.
certainly could.
Let's see how they get on. And I think the Red Bull, though, in general, both seem to be struggling. They're not on the pace of the likes of the McLarens. The Mercedes of George Russell in particular was looking quite good yesterday in practice. He's up there again today in the top 5. So the Ferraris as well, actually. They've turned up the wick a bit, especially when they were on the soft tyre at the start of this session. Leclerc currently 2nd, Hamilton in 4th, but they have still got more to find after their practice running yesterday. Are they finding it as we speak? We shall see. It's Piastri, Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton, Russell, the top 5. Then comes Tsunoda. Gasly is 7th. Hadjar 8th, who's having a great run so far this weekend. Alonso 9th. And Ollie Behrman, who is currently up into that top 10 spot in the Haas, as they are continuing to try and find out where their car lies. Indeed, it was such a swing for Haas, wasn't it, right at the start of the year? Australia was really worrying for them. Ai Komatsu saying we've got a big problem, and then a massive swing in China, and after the disqualifications, a top 5 result for Esteban Ocon.
Just shows how things can change quite quickly in Formula 1, and you're doing good one weekend and then to the next maybe not so much, or vice versa. But yeah, they'll be looking to make big steps this weekend. Ollie Behrman's currently sat in 10th place. They didn't have good pace, it looked, yesterday. But of course, it was an affected session in free practice 2 yesterday, but they're not looking too bad. Certainly not a bad lap time for Ollie Behrman on the hard tyre. He's mixing it up in between a few drivers that are on the mediums. He's only 3/10 behind Fernando Alonso, who's in 9th on the medium tyre. But George Russell's just jumped to the top of the times. He was out on the soft tyre, but he's gone 3/10 of a second faster than Oscar Piastri. So the Mercedes, one of the dark horse potentially for pole position later on today, is Valtteri Bottas. Watches on. Lewis Hamilton, he's out on the soft tyre, so we're going to see a few more drivers switching over to that soft tyre now, Harry. But one thing to also note is track evolution. The track is just going to start to get better and better and better. We've had a couple of support races here this weekend, but nothing like F1 laying down their own rubber, and the session will be the best at the end.
Yeah, over halfway through now this free practice 3 session, the final session ahead of qualifying. 24 minutes and 4.32 seconds remaining, while the likes of Red Bull and Max Verstappen have really been putting in the lap times. Verstappen and Red Bull leaving no stone unturned in search for results when it comes to race pace later on. He's now come back into the pits, and we might well see some quick running from them when they come back out. Soft tyre running for the 2 Ferraris ongoing. Charles Leclerc's fastest of anybody in the final sector. Hamilton's just about to come to the line now. He's currently down in 5th. Good lap for the 7-time champion this. Puts himself into 2nd, a 10th and a half away from George Russell, who did just put in the quickest lap time, a 1:28.385. It's been a really good start to the year for George Russell, hasn't it, Alice? 2 podiums from 2 races, and Mercedes, okay, they feel like they're still missing that little something in the first 2 races to get on par with McLaren. But for Russell to lead that team forward, this is exactly how he wanted to start the year, especially with all the hype around his teammate, the young Italian rookie Kimi Antonelli.
He's certainly taken to his role as you could say number 1 driver effectively. Are we going to say that? I guess that's a different debate, whether Lewis was that last year, as Leclerc just pops up 0.03 of a second off George Russell's time. So Leclerc up into P2 now with a pretty impressive lap, losing a little bit of time in the final sector. Didn't even set a personal best in that final sector. Potentially more to come from him, but he's finding life as being the top dog at Mercedes pretty nicely, pretty well, and I think he's done an impressive job with having a rookie as a teammate. It's not always the easiest, because when you've got 2 teammates really pushing each other hard, you actually can learn and develop a car even quicker. But no, I'm impressed with how George Russell has started this season, and his pace is looking pretty strong in that Mercedes at the moment.
Mercedes currently bookmarking the timing tower with their drivers. George Russell fastest, Antonelli 20th.
Turn 9, focus on exit.
Yeah, I know, I almost went out.
That was Gabriel Bortoleto, the Brazilian rookie in the Sauber, being told to focus on his exit out of the second Degner, where we've just seen a replay of his Sauber sliding as he tries to control the car getting onto the power. Bortoleto currently in 11th, which for a Sauber is by all means not too shabby. Coming back to George Russell then, let's hear what the British racer had to say after practice yesterday.
George, a lot of red flags to contend with out there this afternoon, but how was that first day for you? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, glad to see Jack was okay. I mean, it looked like there's not much he could have done there, and yeah, it's always a big concern when you see such a big crash. But from our side, pretty positive day, to be honest. The car's been handling really nicely, and I've been pretty pleased with that, to be honest. So we've got to make sure it stays the same for tomorrow. The wind is playing a big factor. It's really windy out there, and tomorrow the wind's going to shift 180 degrees. So that's going to really change how the car's feeling. But I'm confident we can be in the mix for fighting for the front two rows.
Were you still able to get a decent understanding across the different compounds in those windows that the track was green?
Yeah, I mean, often when you have the hard tyre on, it goes for quite a long time. So, I mean, I got 4 laps on that tyre, and you'll be hoping on Sunday to be doing, up to 30 odd laps on that tyre. So it's in those last 10 laps in the race when you really know if the tyre's able to hold on or not. So that's going to be news to everyone on Sunday. A bit of rain maybe on the way. I don't think there's a huge amount of learning to be had, but as I said, we were always there or thereabouts on the timesheet, which is the biggest, most important thing.
Yeah, obviously you're going to be digging into the data overnight, but initial feeling that you can be up there again and
I think I mean the McLarens once more look very strong, and when they put the lap together they're a step ahead, but that's we know that's the case, and a few other guys, Hajar's doing a really great job. He's been really fast as well, which was quite a surprise. So we just don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, and even Fernando, before he went off, was on a really fast lap as well. So it's a little bit unusual to see so many different teams in the mix, but I'd like to think we'd be in that fight for the top four positions. Thank you,
George. Cheers. Thank you.
George Russell then, hoping and thinking he'll be in the fight for the top 4. At the moment, it's looking good. Mercedes just need his teammate Antonelli up there, and they could be on for a very good weekend, a very good 2025 indeed for the Silver Arrows. While George Russell was speaking there, a few moments for the Aston Martin drivers. Fernando Alonso, who made a mistake yesterday coming into the Degners and put a wheel onto the grass and found himself into the gravel. Rather uncharacteristic mistake from the Spaniard. He is having a much better session today, though, currently 9th, but struggling a little bit to get that car turned in to the hairpin. The wind has picked up a bit and can really cause these cars to struggle at times. Meanwhile, his teammate Lance Stroll, who had issues earlier on with feeling some vibrations in his wheels, that didn't seem to come to anything that we saw, but we just saw a replay of Lance Stroll heading down the main straight with the DRS rear wing open. It almost looked like the rear wing was flapping a little bit too much, and it looked like an issue there for his DRS rear wing flap as he was making his way towards turn 1.
So George talking about the wind, it has really changed direction quite massively compared to where it was yesterday. They now have a tailwind and a bit of a tailwind going into turn 11, and then they have a bit of a crosswind going through turn 8 and 9. That's the Degners. The speed isn't as high as it was yesterday, but it does seem a little bit gusty. Just looking at our timing screens, the wind speed is changing. It's going up and down, which it can cause, well, it's unpredictable, isn't it? When you head into Degner, the wind could be less one lap, and then you go through the next lap and you catch that gust of wind. So it can be tricky for the drivers out there, but Yuki Tsunoda, he's back on track once again, this time on a soft set of tyres. So as we touched on, we're going to see quite a few of the drivers out now on a soft set of tyres. This is their last chance to get in those final push runs before the qualifying session later on today.
I must say, I do love that white livery on the Red Bull.
It is good. It is good.
The only slight annoyance is that on quick glance, you might think it's the Racing Bulls.
I did that. Yeah, I made that mistake yesterday. The only difference really that I can spot is the Red Bull has the black rear wing.
The Last time a Japanese driver raced in a car that was liveried white and black, can you recall? Do you remember what happened?
Would it be the Toyota, back in the Toyota?
No, that was more red. That was more Reddy. That was a red car.
White. Was the Toyota? It had quite white, wasn't it?
Well, that's not the answer I'm looking for.
Okay.
But you're not far.
It's not Harry's answer.
Fast forward a little bit in time. I'll give you one more go.
Fast forward.
So from the Toyota era, so a bit after that, a Japanese driver in a white and black liveried car around this very circuit.
Would it be? It's going to be Yuki, isn't it? Because the Alpha Tauri would rock up with some special liveries. Go on.
I'm afraid not. Kamui Kobayashi in the Sauber 2012.
Yeah,
stood on the podium.
Saubers, yeah.
Stood on the podium in Suzuka.
Shouting at me.
I know. Shocking, Alice. Half a second he crossed the line. Less than half a second ahead of Jenson Button in that race, which was an epic race. And took his first podium and ended up being his last podium. Also Sauber's last podium in Formula One. But what a day that was for Kamui Kobayashi. So there's my link. Could that happen for Tsunoda come Sunday afternoon? Well, the precedent has been set. 15 minutes and 20 seconds remain. It's Russell fastest ahead of Leclerc. Less than half a tenth of a second between the Mercedes and the Ferrari. Hamilton is third. Piastri, Tsunoda is currently fifth, 4 tenths off. Then it's Norris, Gasly, Hadjar, Alonso and Behrman, who rounds out the top 10. Bortoletto is 11th ahead of Albon. Ocon is 13th. Lawson 14th. Stroll, the top 15. Doohan down in 16th ahead of Verstappen, who's been really focusing on some long runs in the early part of this session. Is now out there on the soft tyre going quickly. Then comes Sainz in 18th. Hulkenberg is 19th, and Kimi Antonelli currently 20th and last on an outlap, having been on the mediums early doors, focusing on longer run pace. He's now out there on the soft tyre. This is Max Verstappen though, down that long stretch, getting rather balked by the Alpine of the Williams, I should say. I think it was Gasly. No, it was Gasly, you're right, sorry. Of Gasly down towards 130R on a quick lap. There's only so much time you'll get a tow, and then it became a bit of a hindrance, but he pops himself up into fourth, 3 tenths off of George Russell and a tenth ahead of his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, both on the soft tyres.
One thing to point out, Lando Norris set a blistering first sector at 2 tenths quicker than the best that was previously set by Charles Leclerc, so it was looking really good until he got all the way down to turn 9, that second part of the Degners, and just ran wide. So really struggling down there. Crosswind could be having an effect, and it's actually changed direction slightly, so it's heading to more of a tailwind slightly going into Degners now. So clearly he's struggling slightly with his handling of his McLaren, but his teammate Oscar Piastri isn't. He's just flown to the top of the times. The first time this weekend we've dipped into the 127s, so 127.9 from Oscar, 3 tenths quicker. And we're just catching a replay now of Lando Norris through into turn 9, turns in, and that was very strange. That almost didn't sound right. He did drop a wheel off, but it didn't quite sound like it was running as it should. Did Lando Norris, but he did probably actually back off because he did use more gravel from the rearward angle than it looked like. But he's on his way again, but he's not matched his best. He's actually a tenth down on himself through sector 1.
Producer Joe has just come up with an absolute blinder on liveries. Apparently I went rather niche, maybe too niche for what time in the UK, coming up to 20 past 4 for FP3 of the Japanese Grand Prix with my Kobayashi stat. But
that was quite a boring stat, to be fair.
That was not boring. If you want another one, okay, is this more boring or less boring than my one? This is Producer Joe's one. The last time a white liveried car won a race. Silence from Powell. Absolute silence.
He's got the use of Google. I can see him. He's sat there Googling and typing away. And he's just said he can't find a definitive answer.
But
so
we have a rough idea, and maybe if you're up #BBCF1, we think, Producer Joe thinks, it's the 2008 Canadian Grand Prix where Robert Kubica won for BMW Sauber.
The Red Bull not turned up with a white livery. Max Verstappen's had some success here in the past 3 Japanese Grand Prix. He's won the last 3. But anyway, back onto track whilst we talk about white liveries. Russell, he's within 1/10 off Oscar Piastri, so he is nearly snuck into the 127s. He's fastest of anyone in the middle sector. Albon, a good lap from him. He crosses the line and goes 5th, nearly 6/10 off Piastri. Gasly in the Alpine seems to have dialed that Alpine in quite nicely. He's ahead of both the Red Bulls, actually. Max Verstappen 7/10 off in 7th. Yuki Tsunoda 8/10 off in 8th place. We're getting a replay of George Russell coming through Spoon. Is he going to run slightly wide? Yeah, using all the road possible up to the gravel and then into the chicane. Let's have a look what happens here. A lot of the first curve, a lot of the second curve, and quite nicely done through there by George Russell.
Do you not like our livery chat? You
two are having your own little combo. What's the best F1 livery then? I thought we were going to chat about this.
Oh, and to be fair, Amit has just said on hashtag BBC F1 Brawn 2009. Oh, producer Joe. See, I thought Brawn, in my head, I suddenly thought, was Brawn a bit sort of yellowy as well? Bit of sort of, was there a bit of yellow on the Brawn?
But
green
there's not
like
just
a lime
a plain
green
white car, is there? They've all got slightly
No,
different.
it's a good point. Brawn was mainly white, and you know what? The blame purely lies on producer Joe for that one. And it's I knew there'd be a big oversight there.
Right, so
Amit, thank you for that. No, I don't think so. Okay, but Red Bull, yes, they had to have white liveries before, but their last one was 2021 Turkey, I think, and Bottas won that race for Mercedes. So in terms of the last time a white livery car won a race, we're going for 2009 Brawn, not 08 Canada, but I still think that was a good shout. Favourite, I tell you what, favourite ever liveries.
I just asked this question.
Oh, have you? Sorry, I wasn't listening. Favourite ever liveries. What's your favourite livery of all time? And hashtag BBC F1, what's yours in these last 9 minutes and 19 seconds while these quick laps are coming in? Favourite ever livery? Because the Haas one that they've gone for this weekend was quite nice. Sauber did an April Fool's joke and said they were going to run a steak livery in terms of the meat. They didn't quite follow through with that one because they also are known by another name which we don't really call them by. But favourite ever liveries, there's the classics, aren't there? There's like the Lotus, isn't there? The black and gold, the John Player livery. There's the I always quite enjoyed the. I tell you what,
I did like
Toro
the Jordan
Rosso,
livery.
Oh, the Jordan livery. 7up livery, Jordan livery. Which
one?
The yellow.
It's going for the yellow.
The 7up one was also quite good.
The 7up was very good. Was very good actually. But I do like the Haas this weekend.
The Haas is nice. It's really gone for the cherry blossom theme to celebrate their technical partner Toyota. I know a lot of people loved McLaren going to almost back to the papaya that they brought in. I've got a soft spot for the chrome. I know we shouldn't be doing brands and all that, but we know where they had the chrome livery to 2009, 10, 11 with the UK phone network on it. We'll do it that way. I love that one. Yeah, that for me brings a bit of nostalgia.
I mean, I have to admit, as Charles Leclerc radio.
Well, I don't know who the that was, but anyway, so bad. They're staying in the middle.
Oh, that was close on the exit there. It was
that was Albon.
It was one of the Williamses through. That looked like on the exit of turn 5 into 6. In the way basically for Charles Leclerc, so that hindered him slightly. He is up in 4th place at the moment, 4.5 tenths off Lando Norris, who amongst our livery chat has popped it up to the top of the times, pretty much matching his teammate Oscar Piastri. So could we have a real fight on our hands between these two papaya drivers? Russell, he's a tenth shy of Lando Norris, so he did make a slight improvement but not quite enough to topple the McLarens at the top of the times.
Yeah, 7 minutes remaining. Norris quickest ahead of Piastri, Russell third, Leclerc, Verstappen fourth, half a second away. Then it's Hamilton, Albon, Gasly, Tsunoda is ninth ahead of Hadjar, Sainz is 11th ahead of Lawson, Antonelli, Doohan 14th, Alonso is 15th, Behrman, Bortoletto, Ocon is 18th ahead of Stroll, and Hulkenberg 20th and last. As we get into these last closing minutes of the final practice session ahead of qualifying, we're asking the important questions here, all about your favourite ever livery. And we've just got actually a red flag out on track. Has anybody stopped moving? I thought we were doing quite well with no more grass on fire. And there are some quite dark black patches on the grass where it has caught fire. And we've got it again as well, as a small patch has come alight. Is that coming into 130R?
That is coming into 130R, yeah.
And so this is happening because the grass is incredibly dry around the track. So dry, a lot of it is yellow. And the sparks that are flying from the underside of the cars caused by the skid blocks are basically falling onto the grass, and too much of it is causing the grass to come alight. Safety measures were put into place by the FIA. They dampened the grass, they cut it short, removed loose grass. We already had a red flag earlier on in the practice session for this, and it's come back, but I thought we were doing quite well because we had quite a long gap between grass catching fire, but it's happened again. This is going to be something they're going to have to get on top of for the race on Sunday. I mean, qualifying as well, but you can't be having a race stopped intermittently because grass is catching fire around the circuit.
Exactly. I mean, possibly when all the cars are grouped together at the start, that a marshal could lean over and extinguish the fire depending where it is on the circuit. But once we start bringing into pit stops into the equations, the cars are scattered all around the track. So there won't be a gap for the marshals to do that. And this fire is actually right by the edge of the track, so it wouldn't be safe for a marshal to quickly extinguish. But I'll be surprised, Harry, if we get this session underway with just under 5 minutes remaining. Max Verstappen bleeds and feeds his way into the pits. We've still got Charles Leclerc, Hulkenberg out there, Ocon. So the safety team have to wait until these drivers are into the pits, and by the time Ocon has made his way round turn 14, there's definitely going to be under 4 minutes remaining. Yeah, let's see what the stewards say and race control says. Morning, Luke Etheridge, hashtag BBC F1. Barrichello winning for Brawn at Monza 2009. Last time a white livery car won a race in Formula 1. Could Red Bull try and do something else? Here's Bortoletto.
You okay, mate? Are you okay?
I saved it. Something broke in the tire.
No.
That was Bortoletto.
I think he used the grass.
The 130R. My God.
I think that was Bortoletto thinking something had failed, but he had put a wheel onto the grass coming into 130R and nearly had an incredibly high-speed crash, but managed to save it and is now back into the pits. And that
looking
was
very
where the
wide-eyed, isn't he? As we're looking into his helmet from the camera that faces the driver's cockpit. But I'm pretty sure he clipped the grass there, and the shot that we did see previous to that did show a plume of dust. So potentially that might have sparked the fire, because it was right by where he had that moment.
Hashtag BBC F1 favourite liveries in Formula 1. The blue one has said Williams FW14 for best livery. That was the blue, yellow and white, wasn't it? The Cannon Williams car. Nice shout. Any more, Alice? Any more coming to your mind?
I did like the Fernando Alonso, was it 2008?
The mild
the
7 Renault,
yeah, the Renault.
I like the yellow Renault. The yellow, where they're of more recent times, when they reintroduced, when they went from sort of Lotus Renault to yellow Renault again, with Hulkenberg and Ricciardo. I quite enjoyed that one. We are thinking we're going to get this session back underway. Certainly it looks like the teams are preparing for the cars to head back out there with 2 minutes and 20 seconds on the clock. We were just seeing some quick laps come in, and McLaren at the moment leading the way on that front. Nothing between the two McLaren drivers. Norris edging Piastri Russell third, Leclerc fourth, Verstappen fifth. Albon putting in a good lap in a Williams to get himself up into seventh. And those who are finding themselves towards the back of the Hasses, the Saubers and the Aston Martins, actually. Alonso 15th, Stroll down in 19th. Stroll, though, has looked like he's had a tough weekend so far in that car. We haven't quite seen Kimi Antonelli in this session and what he's got to show, as we're about to get another look at Gabriel Bortoletto's almost Alan McNish style crash that didn't quite happen. Coming into the left-hander 130R,
I'm sure he hit the grass. It looks like he was too far to the right. We need to see now. This will show us if there's a plume of dust, but an outboard shot, yeah. And he's turned in on the grass. He's probably going to look back at that and go, "Oh, why did I give such a vocal radio message?" It's always one of those moments where you go, "No, something definitely broke," and then you're told, "No, actually, you just touched the grass." But 1 minute of the session remaining, Harry, and doesn't seem like there's going to be much sign of us sadly getting back underway, and even if we did,
session will not be resumed
to get round to set a lap. So that's it for free practice 3, should I say? I've gone back in time.
You want to go back and you want to do it all over again?
Yeah, I do. I'm having so much fun.
Can you name all the dropped Red Bull drivers? If you were with us yesterday, you'll understand. If you weren't, well, you should have been, I'm afraid. The clock will continue to count down, but there's only 30 seconds left. The session will not be resumed due to the grass once again catching fire. So that is going to be an issue that needs to be solved, not only for qualifying in a couple of hours' time, but certainly for the race on Sunday. Although we are expecting rain on Sunday. Here's Verstappen.
Yeah, picked up a bit of front, but at the same time I'm also losing the rear now.
Let us know if you'd like to compensate with diff.
It's all over the shop, because in some corners it's not too bad, and then it becomes again undrivable.
Okay, that's useful.
So Verstappen finding the car undrivable. He finished 3/10 ahead of Tsunoda at the end of that session.
Could be the wind's changed direction again. So the wind speed right now is lower than what it was 5-10 minutes ago. So still quite blustery out there. So clearly that Red Bull affected maybe a bit more with the wind, but at the same time, it doesn't sound like they've got it into the window.
I quite like a sash. What about you?
Just a window you can open and close.
I think you're a bifold kind of woman. Well, that's more of a door, I suppose, rather than a window.
Oh no, this
anyway,
not too far now.
It's the end of free practice 3. You'll be pleased to hear. Here's Bortoletto.
We think we don't see anything wrong with the car on the data. On suspension and aerodynamics looks all good.
Is that a polite way from the Sauber engineers to try and tell their rookie driver, I think you made a mistake?
I would have just said to him, I think you went on the grass, mate.
Well, one look at a replay, wouldn't it, for Gabriel Bortoletto, and he'll be able to see that he put a wheel on the grass. The reigning Formula 2 champion, managed by Fernando Alonso. It was interesting, actually, because Alonso put a wheel onto the grass yesterday as well and went into the gravel and thought something had gone wrong with the car too. But actually, he just made a mistake. So, like manager, like driver?
Yeah.
Let's go with that. End of that session. The two McLarens once again fastest. They certainly look like they are the ones to beat. It's Norris ahead of Piastri, but absolutely nothing between them. George Russell third, again following up a good practice session yesterday with more today for the British Mercedes driver. Charles Leclerc fourth ahead of Max Verstappen. Half a second off the McLarens and struggling with that car, calling it undrivable. Still managing to haul it up into fifth ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Alex Albon also half a second off in seventh for Williams ahead of Pierre Gasly. Good results for the Williams and the Alpine drivers, hoping to carry that forward into qualifying. Yuki Tsunoda finished 3/10 off of his teammate Verstappen down in 9th. Hadjar rounding out the top 10. Then it was Carlos Sainz, Liam Lawson 12th, Kimi Antonelli, Jack Doohan and Fernando Alonso in 15th. Oliver Behrman was 16th ahead of Gabriel Bortoletto. Ocon 18th, Stroll 19th and Nico Hülkenberg 20th and last. FP3 then, done and dusted, and all eyes will now go on to qualifying, but there are still certain things to figure out. Can McLaren follow through on their pace, and more crucially, can the FIA control the fires that keep erupting from the grass around this circuit? We will keep you up to speed with how that unfolds. If you want to stay awake in between now and qualifying, we'll have continued coverage if anything urgent appears on the BBC Sport website, but we'll leave it there for now. Thanks to Alice Powell, thanks to the team. Qualifying is on 5 Sports Extra, BBC Sounds, and your smart speaker will be on air from 6:55 ahead of the session going green at 7 o'clock in the morning. We shall see you then. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.